If you're anything like me, you watched a couple of self-improvement videos by YouTubers like Hamza or Imam Ghazi, and you've seen these people recommend like a handful of books to read. So you actually went out, bought a couple of these books, read them, only to find yourself left without anything new. And you haven't actually learned anything after reading these books. And now you're probably thinking that it was a waste of time, it was a waste of money, that the book actually is not that good, and that these YouTubers lied to you. So for me, it was the book called The Way of the Superior Man by David Bada. And it took me around 2 months to finish reading it because up till this point, I still haven't had the habit of actually sitting down and reading books. So even after finishing it, after that much time, taking my time with reading it, I still haven't learned anything new from it. I didn't even understand it actually. And honestly, I didn't even waste much time pondering on why I actually didn't learn anything from this book, and I just went on to the next one that these people recommended, and that was Atomic Habits by James Clear. And with this book, it was a bit different because I had high expectations of it because everyone I knew was recommending it and very highly recommending it. So with this book, I took it more seriously pretty much, and I had a different approach to reading it. Basically, I felt like this book had a lot to offer, and as a result of that, I took it way more seriously. So what I did was I got myself a little notebook so I can write down notes on anything I might find important while reading the book. By the time I finished it, and I wrote a lot of notes while doing so, I actually felt a lot different. I took a lot of knowledge from the book, and the things I could actually apply in my day-to-day life. And was this because this book was better than the previous one? No, not really. I learned way more from the second book because I actually studied it, as opposed to merely reading through it. And that's what makes a world of difference when reading self-help books. So now I will tell you about the framework that I personally use for reading these books and writing notes while doing so. For the first part, the actual reading part, I recommend you sit down like as if you're going to literally study this book, as if you had an exam tomorrow on it in school, for example. You can't really lay down in your bed before sleeping to read these books, or just have your phone next to you buzzing with notifications. It's not going to work. You're going to be distracted. You need to actually create an environment as if you're going to do some deep, meaningful work. Now for the next part, the actual taking notes part, this is useful for two reasons. The first one being is that when you're writing things down, you are going through the motion of writing it. You are thinking of it in your head and you can actually see what you're writing. So that's 3 inputs into your brain. And trust me, man, if you do this, it will absolutely stay in your head after doing so. You will not be forgetting anything. And the second reason is so you can have a quick view of the things you found most important and your understanding of them, so you can just glance over it. Now for the actual system of how I recommend you take down notes is, firstly, get a pen and paper. It's going to be way better than writing down on your phone or on your laptop, because you're not going to be distracted by any notifications. You're not going to have the urge to open any application like YouTube to watch videos or just waste your time. So after you got your notebook, the next thing I recommend you do is just write down the book name, eventually the author's name as well, so you can just have a clear view of and separate what book is what book. Next up, you can just write down the date and the chapter name. Now this is kind of important, but not really. The date is more or less so you can later see how much you actually read in one day. The chapter name is basically so you can have an idea of the context of the sentences, the notes you're going to take under that. Now, next up, you're going to actually write down the sentences word for word from the book. And now this is pretty important in my opinion, because if you want to remember things, you're going to fuck shit, you're going to write down the things word for word, because that's the most guaranteed way it will stay in your head. And after that, you can just write down the page number, so you know what page that's what you've written down, what page is it on. This is also somewhat important because if you want to read more about what you've just written down, you know where to go. Now, in my opinion, the most important part is the notes part, your interpretation of what you've written down. So basically what I personally would do is write down the sentence word for word, then under that write down how I understand it personally, how I can apply it in my day-to-day life, if it's practical advice or just my perception of the quote I've written down. And the reason this is so valuable is because you actually bring the knowledge from inside of the book into the real world, so you can apply it practically for yourself, which is extremely important. And that's the point of self-help books too. It's in the name, to self-help, to help yourself. That's what self-help means. Alright, and that's pretty much it. That's the framework I always use for reading self-help books and getting the most value out of them. And if you actually go out and apply this, I would really be thankful if you wrote down your experiences or if it actually worked for you down in the comments. Alright, I appreciate you for watching this far, and I hope this can help you in any way. Thank you again.